Goofy is a funny animal cartoon character created in 1932 at Walt Disney Productions. Goofy is a tall, anthropomorphic dog, and typically wears a turtleneck and vest, with pants, shoes, white gloves, and a tall hat originally designed as a rumpled fedora. Goofy is a close friend of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and is one of Disney's most popular characters. He is normally characterized as extremely clumsy and dim-witted, yet this interpretation isn't always definitive. Occasionally Goofy is shown as intuitive and clever, albeit in his own unique, eccentric way. Goofy debuted in animated cartoons, starting in 1932 with Mickey's Revue. During the 1930s he was used extensively as part of a comedy trio with Mickey and Donald. Starting in 1939, Goofy was given his own series of shorts which were popular in the 1940s and early 50s. 2 Goofy shorts were nominated for an Oscar, How to Play Football and Aquamania. He also co-starred in a short series with Donald. 3 more Goofy shorts were produced in the 1960s, after which Goofy was only seen in television and comics. He returned to theatrical animation in 1983 with Mickey's Christmas Carol. His last theatrical appearance was How to Hook Up Your Home Theater in 2007. Goofy has also been featured in television, most extensively in Goof Troop, as well as House of Mouse and Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Originally known as Dippy-Dawg, the character is more commonly known simply as Goofy, a name used in his short film series. In his 1950s persona, Goofy was called George Geef, or G.G. Geef, implying that Goofy was merely a nickname. In Goofy Gymnastics he fills out a coupon with the name James Boyd. Sources from the Goof Troop continuity give the character's full name as Goofy Goof, or G.G. Goof, likely a reference to the 1950s name. In many other sources, both animated and comics, the surname Goof continues to be used. In other 2000s-era comics the character's full name has occasionally been given as Goofus Ddawg. Background: of Disney studio animators, Art Babbitt is most regarded for the creation of the Goofy character, while original concept drawings were by Frank Webb. In a 1930s lecture, Babbitt described the character as "Think of a goof as a composite of an everlasting optimist, a gullible good Samaritan, a half-wit, a shiftless, good-natured colored boy and a hick." Goofy's wife has appeared, but always with her face unseen, in 1950s produced cartoon shorts depicting the character as a family man. Goofy's wife dies later on and Goofy states to his son Max in Goof Troop, "She's up there with the stars," so his modern-day appearances portray Goofy as a widower. While raising his son, Max Goof, Goofy's family life contrasts with other major Disney characters such as Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, who are always shown only as uncles rather than parental figures. In the European comic books, Goofy has an adventurer cousin called Arizona Goof, who is a spoof of the fictional archaeologist Indiana Jones. Goofy's catchphrases are GAWRSH, along with the hi hook, which is sometimes followed by a hoo 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 hoo, and especially the Goofy holler. Pinto Colvig, who was a man of primarily one voice, would incorporate the unique laugh and speech pattern into otherwise unrelated cartoon characters that he voiced. According to biographer Neil Gabler, Walt Disney disliked the Goofy cartoons, thinking they were merely stupid cartoons with gags tied together with no larger narrative or emotional engagement and a step backwards to the early days of animation. As such, he threatened constantly to terminate the series, but only continued it to provide make work for his animators. Animation historian Michael Barrier is skeptical of Gabler's claim, saying that his source didn't correspond with what was written. Appearances, early years. Goofy first appeared in Mickey's Revue, first released on May 25, 1932. Directed by Wilfred Jackson, this short movie features Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Horace Horsecolor and Clarabelle Cow performing another song and dance show. Mickey and his gang's animated shorts by this point routinely featured song and dance numbers. It begins as a typical Mickey cartoon of the time, but what was set this short apart from all that had come before was the appearance of a new character, whose behavior served as a running gag. Dippy-Dawg, as he was named by Disney artists, was a member of the audience. He constantly irritated his fellow spectators by noisily crunching peanuts and laughing loudly, till two of those fellow spectators knocked him out with their mallets. This early version of Goofy had other differences with the later and more developed ones besides the name. He was an old man with a white beard, a puffy tail and no trousers, shorts, or undergarments. But the short introduced Goofy's distinct laughter. This laughter was provided by Pinto Colvig. A considerably younger Deputy AWG then appeared in the Whoopee Party, first released on September 17, 1932, as a party guest and a friend of Mickey and his gang. Deputy AWG made a total of 4 appearances in 1932 and 2 more in 1933, but most of them were mere cameos. In the Silly Symphonies cartoon The Grasshopper and the Ants, the Grasshopper had an aloof character similar to Goofy and shared the same voice as the Goofy character. By his 7th appearance, in Orphans' Benefit, first released on August 11, 1934, he gained the new name Goofy, and became a regular member of the gang along with 2 other new characters, Donald Duck and Clara Clark. Trio Years with Mickey and Donald, Mickey's Service Station, directed by Ben Sharpsteen, first released on March 16, 1935, was the first of the classic Mickey, Donald, and Goofy comedy shorts. Those films had the trio trying to cooperate in performing a certain assignment given to them. Early on they became separated from each other. Then the short's focus started alternating between each of them facing the problems at hand, each in their own way and distinct style of comedy. The end of the short would reunite the 3 to share the fruits of their efforts, failure more often than success. Clock Cleaners, first released on October 15, 1937, and Lonesome Ghosts, first released on December 24, 1937, are usually considered the highlights of the series and animated classics. Progressively during the series, Mickey's part diminished in favor of Donald, Goofy, and Pluto. The reason for this was simple: between the easily frustrated Donald and Pluto and the always living in a world of his own Goofy, Mickey who became progressively gentler and more laid back seemed to act as the straight man of the trio. The studio's artists found that it had become easier coming up with new gags for Goofy or Donald than Mickey, to a point that Mickey's role had become unnecessary. Polar Trappers, first released on June 17, 1938, was the first film to feature Goofy and Donald as a duo. The short features the duo as partners and owners of Donald and Goofy trapping company. They have settled in the Arctic for an unspecified period of time, to capture live walruses to bring back to civilization. Their food supplies consist of canned beans. The focus shifts between Goofy trying to set traps for walruses and Donald trying to catch penguins to use as fodder, both with the same lack of success. Mickey would return in The Whalers, first released on August 19, 1938, but this and also Tugboat Mickey, released on April 26, 1940, would be the last 2 shorts to feature all 3 characters as a team. Break off into solo series. Goofy next starred at his first solo cartoon Goofy and Wilbur, directed by Dick Hymer, first released on March 17, 1939. The short featured Goofy fishing with the help of Wilbur, his pet grasshopper. The How-To series. In 1939, Colvig had a fallout with Disney and left the studio, leaving Goofy without a voice. According to Leonard Maltin, this is what caused the How-To cartoons of the 1940s, in which Goofy had little dialogue, and a narrator was used. In the cartoons, Goofy would demonstrate, clumsily but always determined and never frustrated, how to do everything from snow ski, to sleeping, to football, to riding a horse. The Goofy How-To cartoons worked so well that they became a staple format, and are still used in current Goofy shorts, the most recent being the How to Hook Up Your Home Theater, released theatrically in 2007. Later, starting with How to Play Baseball, Goofy starred in a series of cartoons where every single character in the cartoon was a different version of Goofy. This took Goofy out of the role of just being a clumsy cartoon dog and into an everyman figure. Colvig returned to Disney in 1944 and resumed the voice of Goofy. Many of the Goofy cartoons were directed by Jack Kinney. The Everyman Years. The 1950s saw Goofy transformed into a family man going through the trials of everyday life, such as dieting, giving up smoking, and the problems of raising children. Walt Disney himself came up with this idea, hoping it would put personality back into the character which he felt was lost when Goofy was merely a crowd of extras. Interestingly, Goofy is never referred to as Goofy during this period. While every cartoon continued with the opening, Walt Disney presents Goofy before each cartoon's title. He was usually called George Geef in the cartoon's dialogue. When the stories featured Goofy as multiple characters, then he had numerous other names as well. In addition, the 50s Goofy shorts gave Goofy a makeover. He was more intelligent, had smaller eyes with eyebrows, often his whole body was pale instead of just his face, and sometimes had a normal voice. He even lacked his droopy ears, the external pair of teeth and white gloves in some shorts. Later appearances: after the 1965 educational film Goofy's Freeway Troubles, Goofy was mostly retired except for cameos, and a brief appearance in Disney Amblins Who Framed Roger Rabbit, as well as in Sport Goofy and Soxomania, which was originally intended to be released theatrically in 1984, but was aired as a 1987 TV special instead. With Colvick dead, Goofy was then voiced with different voice actors until Bill Farmer became the official voice. Goofy also had an act in the 1969 tour show, Disney on Parade. His co-star in his act was Herbie the Love Bug. In the 1990s Goofy got his own TV series called Goof Troop. In the show Goofy lives with his son Max and his cat Waffles, and they live next door to Pete and his family. Goof Troop eventually led to Goofy and Max starring in their own movies, a Goofy movie and an extremely Goofy movie. While Goofy is clearly depicted as a single custodial parent in both films, with the implication that he is a widower, at the end of an extremely Goofy movie he begins a romance with the character Sylvia Marpole. Goofy reverted to his traditional personality on Mickey Mouse Works and appeared as head waiter on House of Mouse. Goofy's son Max Goof also appeared in House of Mouse as the nightclub's valet, so that Goofy juggled not only his conventional antics but also the father role displayed in Goof Troop and A Goofy Movie. In both Mickey Mouse Works and House of Mouse, Goofy also seemed to have a crush on Clarabelle Cow, as he asks her on a date in the House of Mouse episode Super Goof, and is being stalked by the bovine in the Mickey Mouse Works cartoon, How to Be a Spy. On Disney's Toontown Online, an interactive website for kids, Goofy previously ran his own neighborhood called Goofy Speedway until the close of Toontown. Goofy Speedway was a place where you could race cars and enter the Grand Prix too. Tickets were exclusively spent on everything there, instead of the usual jelly bean currency. The Grand Prix only came on Grand Prix Monday, and Silly Saturday. Goofy's gag shop was also found in almost every part of Toontown except Cog HQ's, Goofy Speedway, or Chip and Dale's Acorn Acres. At Goofy's gag shop, Toons could buy gags. Clarabelle has been noted as Horace Horzacola's Bianca copyright in early decades, but according to comics from the 1960s and 1970s and more recent cartoons like House of Mouse, Mouseworks, and Mickey, Donald, Goofy, the Three Musketeers, Goofy and Clarabelle seem to have affections for one another. Perhaps as an attempt for Disney to give Goofy a girlfriend to match his two male co-stars. Later in an extremely Goofy movie, he gains a girlfriend named Sylvia Marpole. Goofy also appears in the children's television series, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, with his trademark attire and personality. Goofy appeared in The Lion King 1/1/2. Recently, Goofy starred in a new theatrical cartoon short called How to Hook Up Your Home Theater, which premiered at the Ottawa International Animation Festival. The short received a positive review from animation historian Jerry Beck and then had wide release on December 21, 2007 in front of National Treasure, Book of Secrets, and has aired on several occasions on the Disney Channel. List of Goofy theatrical short films: 1930s, Goofy and Wilbur; 1940s, Goofy's Glider, Baggage Buster, The Art of Skiing, The Art of Self-Defense, How to Play Baseball, The Olympic Champ, How to Swim, How to Fish, El Gaucho Goofy, Victory Vehicles, How to Be a Sailor, How to Play Golf, How to Play Football, Tiger Trouble, African Diary, California Bust, Hockey Homicide, A Night for a Day, Double Dribble, Foul Hunting, They're Off, The Big Wash, Tennis Racket, Goofy Gymnastics, 1950s, How to Ride a Horse, Motor Mania, Hold the Pose, Lion Down, Homemade Home. Cold War, Tomorrow We Diet. Get Rich Quick, Fathers Are People, No Smoking, Father's Lion, Hello, Aloha, Man's Best Friend, Two Gun Goofy, Teachers Are People, 2 Weeks Vacation, How to Be a Detective, Father's Day Off, For Whom the Bulls Toil, Father's Weekend, How to Dance, How to Sleep, 1960s, Aquamania, Freeway Phobia, Goofy's Freeway Troubles, 2000s 2010s, How to Hook Up Your Home Theater, Shakina Euro Unregistered Trademark In With Goofy, List of theatrical Donald and Goofy cartoons. Besides his own solo cartoons and supporting character in Mickey shorts, there were also made some theatrical shorts presented as Donald and Goofy. Cartoons, Polar Trappers, The Fox Hunt, Bill Posters, No Sale, Frank Duck Brings 'Em Back Alive, Crazy with the Heat. In comics, comic strips first called the character Dippy Dawg, but eventually his name changed to Goofy by 1936. In the early years the other members of Mickey Mouse's gang considered him a meddler and a pest, but eventually warmed up to him. The comic strips drawn by Floyd Gottfredson for Disney were generally based on what was going on in the Mickey Mouse shorts at the time, but when Donald Duck's popularity led to Donald Duck gaining his own newspaper strip, Disney decided that he was no longer allowed to appear in Gottfredson's strips. Accordingly, Goofy remained alone as Mickey's sidekick, replacing Horace Horsecollar as Mickey's fellow adventurer and companion. Similarly, in comics, the Mickey Mouse world with Goofy as Mickey's sidekick was usually very separate from the Donald Duck world, and crossovers were rare. Goofy also has a characteristic habit of holding his hand in front of his mouth, a trademark that was introduced by Paul Murray. A character called Glory Bee was Goofy's girlfriend for some years. In 1990, when Disney was publishing their own comics, Goofy starred in Goofy Adventures, which featured him starring in various parodies. Unfortunately, perhaps because of poor sales, Goofy Adventures was the first of the company's titles to be cancelled by the Disney Comics implosion, ending at its 17th issue. Oddly enough, Goofy Adventures was the only one of the cancelled titles to declare its cancellation right there. The other unfortunate titles ended abruptly with no immediate announcement of their cancellation. Super Goof. Super Goof is Goofy's superhero alter ego. He gets his power by eating super goobers. His powers are similar to Superman's. Goofy became the first Disney character to get a career as a superhero, but several would follow, notably Donald Duck as Paperinique, whose reliance on gadgets and the night made him more of a Batman figure. The initial concept was developed by Disney Publications department head George Sherman and Disney United Kingdom merchandising representative Peter Woods. It was passed on to Western Publishing scripter Del Connell, who refined it, including the eventual device of the goobers providing superpowers. Super Goof first appeared in the Phantom Blot No. 2 by Connell and Paul Murray, where he was just imagining that he was a superhero. He made his first appearance as an actual superhero in Donald Duck No. 102, in the story All's Well That Ends Awful, also by Connell and Murray. In that story his powers come from wearing a cape invented by Gyro Gearloose. Beginning with his third appearance, The Thief of Zanzibar from Super Goof No. 1, the origin of his powers is meteor-irradiated peanuts. In later stories, Super Goof not only encountered the Phantom Blot, but also such adversaries as Black Pete, the Beagle Boys, Emil Eagle, and Mad Madam Mim. Super Goof's secret identity is known only to his nephew Gilbert, who also calls himself Super Gilly on occasion. This is despite the fact that Super Goof does not wear a mask, his costume consisting solely of a red Union suit and a cape, a likely parody of Superman's poor yet effective means to conceal his identity. Comic relief in the stories would spring from the fact that Super Goof's powers would wear off at the least opportune moments, such as when he was flying or in need of super strength. Goofy always kept a few super goobers in his hat, but would occasionally forget to restock, leading to situations in which he would have to get out of trouble without the superpowers. In a crossover story, Huey, Dewey and Louie found a super goober plant sprouted by a dropped goober, and borrowed Super Goof's powers. After doing a round of super deeds, the Ducks' powers faded, and they had to be rescued by the Junior Woodchucks. Super Goof had his own comic book series from 1965 to 1984 with a 74-issue run from Gold Key Comics including a handful of stories scripted by Mark Evania. Additional Super Goof stories appeared in Walt Disney Comics Digest. Reprints were featured in one of the Dynaped Deluxe comics issued by Western in the late 1970s and Disney Comic Album No. 8 from Disney Comics. The first release in the German-language Heimliche Helden book series by E. Harper published October 2005 was devoted to Super Goof. Gemstone reprinted a Disney Studio program story written by Evania and drawn by Jack Bradbury as a backup in their 2006 release Return of the Blotman with the rescripting handled by longtime Super Goof aficionado Joe DeSivia. On Disney's Toontown Online during the Halloween season, Goofy is Super Goof for the occasion. He also appeared in one episode of Disney's House of Mouse and in 2 episodes of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. In video games, Kingdom Hearts series. Goofy is captain of the Royal Guard at Disney Castle in the Kingdom Hearts video game series. Averse to using actual weapons, Goofy fights with a shield. This job doesn't involve much, since the castle is usually a peaceful place, until King Mickey disappears. Following a letter the king left, he and Donald, the court magician, meet Sora and embark on a quest with him to find the king and Sora's missing friends. In the game series, Goofy still suffers from being the butt of comic relief, but also is the constant voice of optimism and, surprisingly, selectively perceptive, often noticing things others miss and keeping his cool when Sora and Donald lose it. Goofy's loyalty was also tested when Riku wielded the Keyblade thus, following the king's orders, he followed Riku instead. As Riku was about to attack Sora, Goofy used his shield to protect Sora, thus disobeying the king. When Sora, Donald, and Goofy enter the realm known as Timeless River, Goofy states that the world looks familiar. A reference to his cartoons done in the early to mid-1930s. At many times in the Kingdom Hearts series, Goofy is shown to still be his clumsy self, however, in Kingdom Hearts 2, he is very keen to details and has very accurate assumptions of certain things. For example, he was the first to figure out why Organization 13 was after the Beast, and he was the first to see through Fa Mulan's disguise and discovery that Mulan was actually a woman dressed as a male soldier. There were even several instances where Goofy seemed to have more common sense than Sora and Donald, even saying they should look before we leap, when Sora and Donald saw Mushroom's shadow resembling a dragon, that Sora had mistaken for a Heartless. Around the middle of Kingdom Hearts 2, in possibly one of the series' most mature scenes, Goofy pushes Mickey out of the way of an oncoming boulder and is hit directly on the head instead, at which point he falls to the ground and lands against a wall, supposedly dead. However, Goofy later catches up to the heroes completely unscathed, and explains that he gets bumped on the head all the time, perhaps a reference to many of his cartoons. Goofy reappears in the prequel, Kingdom Hearts, Birth by Sleep, in a relatively minor role, having accompanied Mickey to Yensid's tower to watch Mickey's Mark of Mastery exam. Upon realizing that Mickey has been abducted and taken to the Keyblade graveyard by Master Xehanort in an attempt to lure Ventus out, Goofy and Donald prepare to venture out to rescue Mickey, but as they will obviously be no match for Xehanort, Ventus goes alone. Donald and Goofy later care for their king as he recuperates from his injuries. In other video games, Goofy was the star of an early platformer, Matterhorn Screamer for the Apple II and Commodore 64. Goofy also starred in Super Nintendo adventure game Goof Troop alongside his son Max and in Goofy's Hysterical History Tour for the Sega Genesis where he's a head janitor and he must recover the missing pieces of some museum exhibits. Goofy appears briefly in Quickshot, a Genesis game that starred Donald Duck. Goofy is located within the ancient ruins in Mexico, and gives Donald the red plunger and a strange note that solves a puzzle in Egypt later in the game. He also was in the Nintendo GameCube and Game Boy Advance game Disney's Party as one of the playable characters. 2 games for kids were released, Goofy's Funhouse for the PlayStation and Goofy's Railway Express for the Commodore 64. He also appears 2001 in Disney's Extremely Goofy Skateboarding for PC. Goofy is a playable character in Disney THNK Fast. Concept art for Goofy was made for his appearance in the 2009 and 2010 Wii game, Epic Mickey. He appears as one of the buddies that the Mad Doctor creates for Oswald the Lucky Rabbit to replicate the facade of Mickey Mouse's success. A variation of him seems to appear as a minor shopkeeper named Tki Sam. Goofy briefly appears in Disney's Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse for Super Nintendo, released in 1992. As noted above, Goofy appears in Disney's online game Toontown Online. Voice actor portrayal: Pinto Colvig voiced Goofy for most of his classic appearances from 1932 to 1965. However, many cartoons feature Goofy silent or have recycled dialogue from earlier shorts or have various different-sounding Goofys instead of the original. Colvig also gave Goofy a normal voice for 4 George Geef shorts, while in Goofy and Wilbur Goofy was voiced by George Johnson. Hal Smith voiced Goofy in Mickey's Christmas Carol in 1983. Ryan did the voice for DTV Valentine in 1986 and Down and Out with Donald Duck in 1987. Tony Pope voiced Goofy in Sport Goofy and Soxomania in 1987 and Who Framed Roger Rabbit in 1988. Aside from those occasions, Bill Farmer has been voicing Goofy since 1987, who originally closely imitated Colvig for projects like The Prince and the Pauper, but is doing his own take since 1992's Goof Troop. Farmer also inherited Colvig's other characters like Pluto, Sleepy from Snow White and Practical Pig from The Three Little Pigs. Confusion concerning Goofy and Pluto: Disney has needed to deal with a certain amount of confusion concerning the fact that the anthropomorphic Goofy is treated as a human while Pluto is treated as a household pet, despite being of the same species. On their website, it stated that Goofy was originally created as DPDAWG, and was created as a human character, as opposed to Pluto, who was a pet, so, Goofy walked upright and had a speaking voice. This problem was humorously illustrated in the movie Stand By Me, in which one of the boys ponders, Mickey's a mouse, Donald's a duck, and Pluto's a dog. What's Goofy? There is also an episode of the Disney Channel series Even Stevens called Scrub Day, wherein Louie rallying the troop speech he wonders why Goofy got to walk and talk and Pluto has to eat from a dog bowl. This confusion is also mentioned in the French movie La Cité copyright de la Peur. In the Disney's Toontown Online event April Toons Week, characters switch playgrounds and everything is silly. Pluto switches places with Minnie Mouse, and he speaks. A brief gag in an episode of House of Mouse also acknowledges Hades asks Goofy, "Are you a man? Are you a dog? Are you a man-dog? What are you?" Goofy simply replies, "I'm just Goofy." The confusion between Goofy and Pluto is also mentioned in an episode of Full House by Dave Coulier. Tina Fey used the term Goofy Pluto to refer to seemingly disparate roles for guest stars on 30 Rock, namely the mismatch between Jennifer Aniston playing a character in the show in the same episode in which the cast of Night Court appears as themselves in the episode titled The One with the Cast of Night Court. Relatives: Max Goof. Max Goof is a fictional character who is Goofy's teenage son. He first appeared in the 1992 television series Goof Troop. He also stars in the spin-off movie A Goofy Movie and its direct-to-video sequel An Extremely Goofy Movie. The direct-to-video Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas and its sequel Mickey's Twice Upon a Christmas. And the 2001 TV series House of Mouse. Max is a playable character on the Super Nintendo video game Goof Troop, the PlayStation 2 video game Disney Golf, and the PC video game Disney's Extremely Goofy Skateboarding. Max is one of the few Disney characters, aside from his best friend PJ and Huey, Dewey, and Louie Child or otherwise, who has actually aged in subsequent appearances. He was depicted as 11 in Goof Troop, then a 16-year-old high school student in A Goofy Movie, then in An Extremely Goofy Movie he turns 18 years old and attending college. In House of Mouse, he is old enough to be employed as a valet. Goofy Holler. The Goofy Holler is a stock sound effect that is used frequently in Walt Disney cartoons and films. It is the cry Goofy makes when falling or being launched into the air, which could be transcribed as Yamai hoo hoo hooey. The holler was originally recorded by yodeler Hannah S. Schroll for the 1941 short The Art of Skiing. Some sources claim that Schroll was not paid for the recording. Bill Farmer, the current voice of Goofy, demonstrated the Goofy holler in the Disney Treasures DVD The Complete Goofy. He also does this in the Kingdom Hearts games. The holler is also used in films and cartoons in which Goofy doesn't appear, generally in situations which are particularly goofy. In a Batman, the animated series episode titled The Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne, the Joker performs the holler when a plane crashes toward a canyon. In the Wacky Deli episode of Rocko's Modern Life, the holler is heard at the end of the haphazardly made cartoon created by Rocko, Heifer Wolf, and Filbert for Ralph Bighead. A version of the holler is used in a cutaway in the Dial Meg for Murder episode of Family Guy when Goofy is cast into hell for causing 9/11. The term Goofy holler was first created by a user of the Internet Movie Database, and originated on the trivia page for A Goofy Movie. It is now generally considered the name for the sound effect. See also, Dog Faces, Notes. External links, Goofy at the Index, Disney's bio of Goofy, Goofy at the Internet Movie Database.